Hi, guys. Good evening, and welcome back once again to the EdWord. I'm your host, Eddie, and in tonight's video, I will be discussing what I thought of the latest and possibly the greatest episode of this season so far. For The Walking Dead, and it just had so much, and once again, this was a super character-driven episode and story. But before I get into all of that, and I talk too long, of course, please be warned: this is a spoiler-filled episode review. If you're not caught up on The Walking Dead by this episode or the past couple of episodes, don't keep watching or listening, as I will be going into spoilers, plot details, character moments, and all that jazz. So, you have been warned. That being said, let's jump right into it. First of all, I loved how many different storylines there were going on here. We had the Sadiq Ezekiel storyline, the Whisperer storyline, the Daryl, Kelly, Connie storyline, Magna and Yumiko storyline, Negan and Brandon and the two survivors they meet storyline. Just multiple ongoing storylines, but some of them overlapped with each other, but the rest of them actually balanced each other out quite a bit. They did a good job. They did a healthy job cutting back and forth each between little storyline. And some wrapped up, some did not as much, just leaving the door open for the next episode, obviously. But I really liked that. I thought it was a good way of storytelling. I loved Negan in this episode. This episode shows us how he's changed and how he hasn't really changed. Because, like the showrunner Angela King said, he still has an edge to him because Negan will always be Negan. But this episode, I felt like, did a great job just reflecting and demonstrating just how much he has changed since the end of since the end of Season 8, because end of Season 8, we saw him get taken alive, jump to the Season 9 premiere. It's been about a year and a half since the end of the war with him and the Saviors, and then we have a 6-year time jump, and then we have a brief time jump between Seasons 9 and 10, and that was about less than a year. So I think he's been in prison for about 7 or 8 years now, and clearly he has had a lot of time to think and reflect. Well, I don't know if he's necessarily done that, but this episode showed us just how much he's changed. Now, whether or not that change will turn out to be good or bad remains to be seen, but this episode did an excellent job giving us a great Negan story now that he was out of that cage and how he was, struggling to find his way in the world once again. And it's just so too bad too, because it seems like irony and tragedy seems to follow him wherever he goes. Here he is, he saves a mother and son from walkers. He's got a psycho fanboy with him, and he tries to help these two. He's actually he's willing to lead them back to either Alexandria or Hilltop and help them find safe passage. And when he goes off to get firewood, he comes back and they're dead at the hands of this psycho. And at first I couldn't figure out who this guy was, and then I was reading a quick recap online to remind myself where he's from. He was Negan's guard at Alexandria when Negan was on work release doing gardening work and whatnot. And apparently he is the son of an ex-savior from Negan's army back in the good old days, apparently. This guy was either a kid or a teenager during the war between the Coalition and the Saviors, and his father was a savior who admired Negan, and this kid basically grew up either hearing stories about Negan or knew about Negan, and obviously liked him enough to finally free him and say, screw it, let's go off and start the sanctuary and get the Saviors back up and running. But clearly that was not Negan's priority, that was this prick's priority. And it was satisfying to watch him die, because I felt like Negan was not only killing him for the heinous thing he did to the mother and son, but I felt like Negan was also trying to erase a part of his past, because he saw a lot of himself in this kid, and I think he realized the kind of effect and influence he had over people back when he was the tyrant that he was. And now that he sees it, he doesn't necessarily like what he sees anymore, and maybe that's a part of himself that he hates or that he's ashamed of. I mean, he's just clearly riddled with conflict, and that's what makes this show so good. That's what I said in my last episode review. Complex characters in appalling situations, and this episode was a perfect example of that. A character like Negan, having an episode like this where we end up kind of rooting for the guy, but just worked on so many levels. And this episode finally gave us what I've been waiting to see since, honestly, since the halfway point of season 9, which is where Negan and Beta have finally met face to face, well, so to speak. And of course, it was in the final shot of this episode, and they don't have much dialogue between the two, but Negan does deliver a smart ass line saying, all right, you big freak, let's do this, or let's get this on, or something like that. And I'm very, very much looking forward to the next episode, because if the next episode is Negan meeting Alpha and Beta, like, fully, and, like, into trying to, like, maybe meet and integrate with the Whisperers or something, that is going to be awesome, and I'm very excited for it. Overall, solid episode. I was a little confused about the Magna storyline. I guess she's just got some trust issues to work out. I'm really enjoying the romantic chemistry between Daryl and Connie. For the record, never cared about the Carol-Daryl ship. Never a fan. It was never a huge priority of mine. I had other expectations for the show. Whether or not Daryl and Carol would become an item, it was never a huge priority or desire of mine, so I don't really care that they're not together or not. Frankly, I'm enjoying Daryl and Connie's chemistry a lot more than I am Carol and Daryl's chemistry, because those two do have good chemistry, but as good friends, not as potential romantic partners. But that's just me. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not sure. But overall, this was a great episode, super character-driven. I know they say that a lot, but this episode especially had that. And excellent performances from Jeffrey Dean Morgan and everybody else. Just bravo. I can't wait to see what the next episode holds in store for us. So what did you guys think of tonight's episode? Did you like it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Were you expecting more, expecting less? What do you think is going to happen with Negan and the Whisperers? Let me hear your thoughts and opinions down below in the comments section. If you are familiar with the comics and you know what comes next, or you think you might know, for the sake of not accidentally or potentially spoiling anything for anybody, please keep those theories or those stories to yourself, but I do still want to hear your input. Thanks for watching. Have a great rest of the night. And of course, until next time, may the Force be with you.